The November wind cut through Jack Miller's worn jacket as he reached for a loaf of bread on the shelf at Harrison's Market. His daughter Emma's small hand tightened in his as a sharp voice boomed across the store. I saw you slip that medicine into your bag. Don't think being in that chair means you can steal from me. Frank Harrison, the store owner, towered over a young woman in a wheelchair, his finger jabbing the air between them. Jack froze watching as other customers slowed their shopping, some pulling out phones, others whispering among themselves. The woman in the wheelchair sat perfectly still, her blonde hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. Her spine remained straight, chin raised, even as Frank loomed over her. Sir, I did not take anything. You're welcome to check my bag or the security cameras, but I won't be spoken to this way. Jack noticed how her legs remained completely motionless in the wheelchair. Not a twitch, not a shift, the kind of stillness that spoke of permanent paralysis. The security guard, an older man with tired eyes, shifted uncomfortably beside them. Dad, why is that man yelling at her? Emma whispered, pressing closer to his worn jacket. Before Jack could answer, Frank grabbed the woman's bag, dumping its contents onto the counter with unnecessary force. A leather wallet tumbled out, followed by tissues, a tablet, keys, and nothing else. No medicine, no stolen goods. Maybe you hid it somewhere else. Frank's hand reached toward the wheelchair's side pocket. That's enough. Jack's voice cut through the store like a blade. He positioned himself between Frank and the woman, his calloused hands visible as he crossed his arms. You've checked her bag. There's nothing there. Frank's face reddened further. This isn't your business, Miller. Take your kid and finish your shopping. It became my business when you started harassing a customer without proof. Jack could feel Emma hiding behind his leg now, but he didn't move. Something about this moment felt important, like the kind of moment that defines who you are when no one's keeping score. The woman looked up at him, hazel eyes holding a mixture of surprise and something else. Relief maybe that someone had finally seen her as more than just the chair. Are you okay? Miss Jack asked, turning slightly toward her while keeping Frank in his peripheral vision. I'm Rebecca. She gathered her scattered belongings with deliberate calm, though Jack could see her hands trembling slightly. I'm fine, thank you. But I can handle this. Can you, Frank spat? Tony, call the police. I want her arrested for shoplifting. The security guard scratched his gray beard nervously. Mr. Harrison, the cameras would show if she took something. Want me to check the footage first? Don't bother. But she's not welcome here anymore. Frank's eyes narrowed at Rebecca. Her kind. Jack's jaw tightened. The words hung in the air like a challenge. What kind would that be? Frank stammered. I mean troublemakers. People who, what? Use wheelchairs. Jack's voice had dropped to a dangerous quiet. Behind him, he heard Emma zip her bag close, the sound somehow louder than it should have been. Dad? Emma tugged at his jacket. Can we help her? Sometimes children see the world more clearly than adults ever could. Jack looked down at his daughter. Her eyes, so much like Catherine's, had been full of that same fierce sense of right and wrong that had made him fall in love with his wife all those years ago. 3 years since they'd lost her. And here was Emma carrying that same light forward. Yes, sweetheart, we can help. He turned back to Frank. You know what? We're done shopping here permanently. Your loss, Frank muttered, but his bravado was cracking. Jack bent down, helping Rebecca gather the last of her things. Emma, following her father's lead, picked up the tissues that had rolled under a display stand and handed them to Rebecca with a shy smile. Thank you, Rebecca said softly, looking between them. Both of you, it's nice to know there are still decent people in the world. There are more of us than you'd think, Jack replied. Can we help you to your car? The November wind hit them hard as they exited the store, and Jack instinctively moved to shield Rebecca from the worst of it. Her chair moved smoothly despite the uneven sidewalk, and he noticed how expertly she navigated around the cracks and bumps. This wasn't new to her. You really didn't have to do that, Rebecca said as they reached a sleek sedan parked in the handicapped space. Most people just look away. Is that what you wanted us to do? Jack asked. She smiled, then really smiled, and something in her face transformed. No, I suppose not. Jack watched as she transferred herself from the wheelchair to the driver's seat with practiced movements. No hesitation, no need for help. Her upper body was strong, compensating for what her legs could no longer do. The car had hand controls, he noticed, specially modified but otherwise unremarkable. I'm Jack, by the way. Jack Miller. This is my daughter, Emma. Hi, Emma said, waving enthusiastically. I like your car. It has special controls like in my video games. Rebecca laughed a genuine warm sound. It does, doesn't it? Makes driving an adventure. We need to find a new grocery store anyway. Harrison's prices were too high. Know any good places around here? There's Simmons's Grocery 2 blocks east. The owner is actually decent. Plus they have those car carts kids love. The race car ones. Emma's eyes lit up. Dad, can we go there instead? Sounds like a plan. Jack hesitated, then asked, do you shop there often? Saturdays usually around this time, actually. Their eyes met and an understanding passed between them. Not a promise, not quite, but a possibility. Maybe we'll see you there sometime, Jack said. Maybe you will. As they watched Rebecca drive away, Emma looked up at her father. Dad, why was that man so mean to her? Jack knelt down to his daughter's level, the same way he had 100 times before when trying to explain the world's complexities to a child who deserved better answers than he often had. Sometimes people are afraid of things that are different, or they make wrong assumptions about people they don't understand. But she's just in a wheelchair. She's not scary. Jack brushed a strand of hair from Emma's face. No, she's not scary at all. But sometimes people see the chair first and the person second, and that's not right. Emma's brow furrowed as she processed this. Like how sometimes my teacher only sees that I can't read well, not how good I am at science. A pang shot through Jack's chest. Exactly like that pumpkin. Jack Miller's hands were still rough from the day's work as he helped Emma with her coat that Saturday morning. Sawdust clung stubbornly to his jeans despite his best efforts to brush it off. He'd spent the morning finishing a custom bookshelf for a client, and now they were heading to Simmons Grocery for their weekly shopping trip. If they happened to run into Rebecca there, well, that would just be a coincidence. One he'd thought about more than he cared to admit. The small apartment they shared in the east side of town felt especially cramped today. It was the kind of place that real estate agents would generously call cozy, with water stains on the ceiling that Jack had painted over twice now, and a radiator that clanged like a percussion instrument on cold mornings. But he'd made it theirs. The coffee table was one he'd crafted himself from reclaimed wood. The shelves lining the walls were installed with his own hands, and most of the furniture had been restored rather than bought new. Emma skipped ahead of him down the sidewalk, her backpack bouncing with each step. Inside was her reading workbook, the one the school specialist had given them to practice with at home. She'd been diagnosed with mild dyslexia last year, and while the school provided some support, Jack knew it wasn't enough. Private tutors cost money he didn't have, so most evenings found them at the kitchen table working through exercises that left them both frustrated more often than not. Jack caught up to Emma as they reached the crosswalk, automatically taking her hand. What kind of cereal should we get this week? Can we try the one with the little marshmallows? Emma's hopeful expression was hard to resist. Half a box of marshmallows, half a box of actual cereal, you mean? He grinned down at her, already knowing he'd give in. We'll see. The bell above the door chimed as they entered Simmons Grocery. The store was smaller than Harrison's, but warmer somehow, with wood shelving instead of metal and handwritten signs highlighting local products. Jack grabbed a cart, but Emma was already pulling at his sleeve. Dad, look, the race car carts. Can I use one, please? Jack chuckled. Go for it. As Emma climbed into the child-sized cart shaped like a red race car, Jack scanned the store. He wasn't looking for anyone in particular, he told himself. Just getting the lay of the land. His eyes swept past the produce section, the bakery There she was, Rebecca examining a display of apples, her wheelchair positioned sideways to allow other shoppers to pass. She wore a blue sweater today, her hair loose around her shoulders instead of pulled back. Jack felt a strange flutter in his chest, one he hadn't felt in 3 years. One that brought both warmth and an immediate stab of guilt. Emma spotted her at the same moment. Rebecca. She waved enthusiastically, nearly standing up in her race car cart. Rebecca looked up, surprise evident on her face before it melted into a genuine smile. Emma, Jack. You found the place. Jack pushed their cart closer, suddenly conscious of his worn flannel shirt and jeans, with the permanent sawdust embedded in the fabric. We did. Emma was pretty excited about the race car carts. They're clearly superior to regular carts. Rebecca agreed with mock seriousness, making Emma giggle. Are you doing your big shopping trip? Emma nodded vigorously. And I'm helping Dad find everything. I'm the navigator. That's a very important job, Rebecca said. She glanced at Jack with a hint of hesitation. Actually, I could use a navigator too. Would you mind if I joined you both? This store has a different layout than I'm used to. Jack knew it was at least partly an excuse. Rebecca struck him as someone who could navigate anything life threw at her. But Emma was already bouncing with excitement. We can help. I know where the cereal aisle is. Jack met Rebecca's eyes over Emma's head. We'd be happy to have you join us. They moved through the store together, Emma chattering away about school and her favorite toys. Jack found himself relaxing, contributing to the conversation more than he usually did with new people. Rebecca had a way of listening that made you feel like your words mattered. When they reached the cereal aisle, Emma's enthusiasm hit a roadblock. She stared at the colorful boxes, her expression shifting from excitement to confusion. The familiar crease appeared between her eyebrows, the one that showed up whenever she encountered text she needed to read. Which one has the marshmallows? She finally asked, her voice smaller than before. Jack reached for a purple box he knew was her target. This one pumpkin. But Rebecca wheeled her chair closer to Emma. Would you like to try to bat it yourself? I could help. Emma glanced uncertainly at Jack. He nodded encouragement, though a protective instinct made him want to spare her the frustration. Rebecca positioned herself next to the race car cart. Let's look at the pictures first. See these colorful pieces. What shape are they? Emma leaned forward. Stars and moons and rainbows, exactly. Rebecca pointed to the beginning of the product name. So this first letter is L. Can you make that sound? Jack watched in amazement as Rebecca guided Emma through sounding out Lucky Charms, using a different approach than he'd tried before. She didn't rush or correct harshly, instead offering clues and connections that seemed to make sense to Emma. I did it, Emma exclaimed when she finally pieced the name together. Dad, I read it. You sure did, pumpkin. Jack's chest swelled with pride and something else. Gratitude toward this woman who'd spent 10 minutes in a cereal aisle helping his daughter when most people would have moved on. Rebecca smiled. You're really good at matching the letter patterns, Emma. That's a special skill. As they continued shopping, Jack noticed Rebecca occasionally pointing out words on packages, turning it into a game rather than a test. By the time they reached the checkout, Emma had successfully read 5 product names with help more than she usually attempted in public. While waiting in line, Jack found himself studying Rebecca when she wasn't looking. The way she shifted in her chair to reach items on higher shelves without asking for help. The efficiency of her movements. The quiet determination in her eyes that reminded him so much of Catherine, it almost hurt. Do you have plans after this? The words left his mouth before he could reconsider them. Rebecca looked up, surprise flitting across her face. Not really. Why Emma and I usually get ice cream at the place next door after shopping. Sort of our Saturday tradition. You're welcome to join us if you'd like. Emma bounced on her toes. Yes. Come with us, Rebecca. They have chocolate with rainbow sprinkles. Rebecca hesitated, and for a moment Jack was sure she would decline. Then her expression softened. I haven't had ice cream in ages. That sounds wonderful, actually. The ice cream shop was a small, family-owned place with a handful of tables and mismatched chairs. Jack helped Emma onto a wooden stool while Rebecca positioned her wheelchair at the end of the table. The teenage server behind the counter greeted them with a bored expression that brightened when Emma enthusiastically ordered a sundae with extra everything, please. Rebecca ordered a simple vanilla cone while Jack went for coffee, ice cream, and a cup. As they ate, Emma regaled them with stories about her second-grade classroom adventures, complete with dramatic reenactments that had Rebecca laughing until her eyes watered. Do you work with kids? Jack asked during a lull in Emma's storytelling. You're really good with her. Rebecca dabbed at her cone with a napkin. I used to be a reading specialist, actually. Before the accident, she glanced down briefly at her wheelchair. Now I do web design from home. It's creative in a different way, but I miss working with children. Jack's eyebrows rose. You're a reading specialist. Emma has dyslexia. We've been trying to work with the school, but he trailed off, not wanting to sound like he was fishing for free help. Rebecca's eyes lit with understanding and interest. Has she been tested for visual processing strengths? Sometimes kids with dyslexia have incredible pattern recognition and spatial reasoning. They just need different approaches to connect those skills to reading. Emma looked between them. Is that why letters get all jumbled for me? Rebecca nodded. Your brain is wired a little differently. It gives you special abilities in some areas but makes other things challenging. It doesn't mean you can't read. It just means you need different strategies than most kids. For the next 20 minutes, Rebecca explained approaches to Jack that he'd never heard from Emma's teachers. She demonstrated a few simple techniques using napkins and straws, arranging them in patterns that somehow made Emma's eyes light up with recognition. You know, Jack said slowly, I hate to impose, but would you ever consider... He paused, gathering courage. Would you be willing to work with Emma? Sometimes I'd pay you, of course. Rebecca's expression softened. I'd love to help Emma with reading, but I wouldn't accept payment. Maybe we could make it part of our Saturday routine. After shopping, Emma nearly knocked over her ice cream in excitement. Yes, please, Dad. Can Rebecca teach me? Jack looked between his daughter's hopeful face and Rebecca's warm smile, feeling something shift in the atmosphere around them, as if the universe had just rearranged itself slightly to make room for new possibilities. That would be amazing if you're sure. I'm sure, Rebecca said, and something in her voice made Jack believe her completely. The Saturday routine became exactly that, a routine. Jack and Emma would meet Rebecca at Simmons's grocery shop together with Emma practicing reading labels, then go for ice cream where Rebecca would spend 30 minutes working with Emma on reading skills. The improvement in Emma's confidence was remarkable. After just 3 weeks, she proudly read an entire children's book aloud, only needing help with the longest words. Jack learned that Rebecca lived across town in a house her father had purchased for her after the accident 5 years ago. She'd been an avid rock climber before a fall had severed her spinal cord, leaving her paralyzed from the waist down. But what impressed Jack most wasn't her adaptation to life in a wheelchair. It was her refusal to be defined by it. On their fourth Saturday together, dark clouds gathered ominously as they left the grocery store. The first fat raindrops hit the pavement just as they reached the ice cream shop door, and within minutes the sky opened up completely. Water cascaded down the street, thunder cracking overhead. Looks like we might be here a while, Jack observed, watching the deluge through the window. The shop owner was already placing a closed early sign on the door, though he assured the few customers inside they could stay until the storm passed. Emma pressed her nose against the glass, watching lightning illuminate the darkened sky. It's like the clouds are having a temper tantrum. Rebecca laughed, pulling her light jacket tighter around her shoulders. That's exactly what it's like. The power flickered once, twice, then went out completely. The shop owner lit battery-operated lanterns, casting the small space in a warm, amber glow. Outside, the storm intensified, wind driving rain sideways against the windows. Jack checked his phone. Radar shows this is going to last for hours. He hesitated, then looked at Rebecca. Our apartment is just 3 blocks from here. You're welcome to wait out the storm there if you'd prefer. Might be more comfortable than sitting in the shop. Rebecca's hesitation was brief but noticeable. Jack immediately backtracked. No pressure, just an option. Emma, however, was already gathering her things. You should come. Rebecca, I can show you my books, and Dad made this cool bookshelf that has secret compartments, and watching Emma's excitement, Rebecca's expression softened. That sounds much nicer than sitting here. If you're sure it's not an imposition. Not at all, Jack assured her, ignoring the strange flutter in his chest. Getting to the apartment required a mad dash through the rain. Jack helped navigate Rebecca's wheelchair through puddles and across suddenly treacherous sidewalks. By the time they reached his building, all 3 were soaked despite their best efforts. The elevator's out again, Jack said apologetically as they entered the lobby. We're only on the 2nd floor, but... Rebecca glanced at her wheelchair, then at Jack with a wry smile. I don't suppose you'd be willing to carry me while Emma brings the chair. Jack hadn't expected that. He'd been preparing to offer to get her back to the ice cream shop. Are you sure I don't want to make you uncomfortable? It's either that or grow gills and swim home in this storm. Rebecca's matter-of-fact tone held no self-pity, only practicality mixed with humor. Jack nodded. Emma, can you fold the chair like Rebecca shows you and bring it up? With surprising efficiency, Rebecca demonstrated how to collapse her wheelchair, which Emma managed with determination, if not grace. Then Rebecca extended her arms toward Jack with simple dignity. Jack carefully lifted her one arm behind her back, the other under her knees. She was lighter than he expected, and he was acutely aware of her arm around his shoulders, the scent of her shampoo as her wet hair brushed his chin. The climb to the 2nd floor was awkward but manageable. Rebecca kept up a conversation with Emma the whole time, seeing her about school and friends, seemingly untroubled by being carried. Jack was grateful. It kept the moment from feeling too intimate, too charged with the awareness he felt of her presence in his arms. When they finally entered the apartment, Emma proudly gave Rebecca the grand tour, which took approximately 45 seconds in the small space. Jack set Rebecca down on the worn but clean sofa, while Emma struggled to unfold the wheelchair. "Here, let me help," Jack said quickly, getting the chair set up next to the couch. He then excused himself to find towels and dry clothes they could change into. In his bedroom, Jack took a moment to steady himself. Having guests, especially female guests, in the apartment was rare. Catherine's presence still lingered in small ways. Her favorite mug on a shelf, a photo of her with infant Emma on the nightstand, the quilt her mother had made on the bed. For a moment, guilt washed over him. It felt like a betrayal, somehow bringing another woman into the space. Then he thought of Catherine's laugh, her insistence that life was for living fully. She'd have been the first to push him toward new connections. With a deep breath, he gathered a clean t-shirt and sweatpants that might fit Rebecca, along with towels for everyone. When he returned to the living room, Emma was showing Rebecca her collection of science books, pointing out illustrations of planets and dinosaurs with expert commentary. Rebecca listened with genuine interest, asking questions that delighted Emma with their specificity. "I found some dry clothes," Jack said, holding out the bundle to Rebecca. "Bathroom's through there if you want to change." "Thank you." Rebecca accepted the clothes with a grateful smile. "I hope the storm lets up soon. I don't want to overstay my welcome." "Stay as long as you need," Jack found himself saying. "It's nice having company." While Rebecca changed, Jack helped Emma into dry clothes, then quickly changed himself. By the time they were all settled again, the storm outside had reached peak intensity, rain lashing the windows while thunder shook the building's foundation. "I think we need hot chocolate for weather like this," Jack announced, heading to the kitchen. "Emma want to help." As they prepared the hot drinks, Emma whispered, "I like Rebecca, Dad. She's nice and pretty." Jack felt his cheeks warm slightly. "She is nice, isn't she?" He kept his voice neutral, though his heart had picked up its pace. When he returned with 3 steaming mugs, Rebecca was examining the bookshelf he'd built along one wall. "Did you make this?" "It's beautiful work." Jack nodded, setting the hot chocolates down. "Woodworking's my trade. I work for Sullivan Construction during the day, but I do custom pieces on weekends and evenings." Rebecca ran her fingers along the smooth edge of a shelf. "The craftsmanship is exceptional. You don't see joinery like this in store-bought furniture." The genuine appreciation in her voice warmed something in Jack's chest. Most people didn't notice those details. Emma tugged at Rebecca's borrowed t-shirt, which hung loosely on her frame. "Can we read a story while it rains? You can show Dad how you helped me with the hard words." Rebecca glanced at Jack for permission. He nodded, and soon the 3 of them were huddled on the sofa, Emma between them, with a picture book about a lost elephant finding its way home. Rebecca gently guided Emma through the text, using techniques that Jack had never seen before. Having Emma trace letters with her finger, creating silly mnemonics for difficult words, and celebrating each success with high fives. Jack found himself watching Rebecca more than the book. The patience in her eyes, the genuine delight when Emma mastered a difficult passage, the gentle way she redirected without criticism when mistakes happened. For the first time, he understood what people meant by the phrase "born teacher." This wasn't just skill, it was calling. The storm continued to rage outside, but inside the apartment, something warm and unfamiliar was taking root. Emma laughed as she correctly read a particularly challenging sentence, throwing her arms around Rebecca in celebration. And Jack, watching them, felt a door within himself that had been firmly shut for 3 years, crack open just a fraction. "You're amazing with her," Jack said softly when Emma went to her room to find another book. "Most people get frustrated when she struggles with reading. You make it seem like an adventure instead of a chore." Rebecca's smile held a hint of sadness. "Everyone deserves to be seen for their strengths, not just their challenges." Emma's incredibly bright. She just processes language differently. Once she has the right tools, there'll be no stopping her. A sudden crash of thunder made them both jump, and the lights, which had come back on, briefly went out again. Emma came racing back into the living room, diving between them on the sofa. "It's okay, Pumpkin," Jack soothed, putting his arm around her. "Just the storm throwing a tantrum." "Remember, I don't like the dark," Emma whispered. Rebecca pulled out her phone, turning on its flashlight. "How about we make shadow puppets while we wait for the lights?" She contorted her hands, creating a rabbit that appeared to hop across the wall. Emma's fear forgotten, she immediately tried to copy the shape. Jack's heart swelled watching them. These two people illuminated by nothing but a phone light, creating magic out of shadows. When Emma finally mastered the rabbit shape, she bounced with excitement. Dad, look what Rebecca taught me, that's wonderful, pumpkin. Jack created his own shadow, a crude dog shape, that made Emma giggle. Yours needs practice, Dad, she informed him solemnly. As the evening progressed and the storm showed no signs of abating, Jack prepared a simple dinner from what he had in the refrigerator. Rebecca insisted on helping chopping vegetables while Jack handled the cooking. Emma set the table with more care than she usually showed, even adding a candle she'd been saving for special occasions since her birthday. The meal itself was nothing fancy, pasta with vegetables and the last of a rotisserie chicken, but the conversation flowed easily. Rebecca shared stories about growing up in Colorado, her father's real estate business that had allowed her a privileged childhood, and her decision to become a teacher rather than join the family company. Did your father mind that you didn't go into real estate? Jack asked as he served second helpings. Rebecca's expression shifted subtly. He never said so directly, but yes, Howard Stewart has very definite ideas about success. Teaching didn't fit his definition. She twirled pasta around her fork. After the accident, he tried to convince me to work for him again. Said I could do marketing from anywhere with a computer. But you chose web design instead. Rebecca nodded. I needed something that was mine, not his. Something I built on my own terms. She glanced up with a self-deprecating smile. Though he did buy me the house I live in, complete independence is still a work in progress. Jack understood that conflict all too well. After Catherine died, her parents had offered to have him and Emma move in with them. The offer was well-intentioned but would have meant giving up his autonomy, his decisions about how to raise his daughter. Independence matters, he agreed. Even when it's harder. A comfortable silence fell between them, broken only by Emma's detailed explanation of a science project her class was working on. Jack noticed how Rebecca listened intently, asking questions that showed she was truly engaged. Catherine had been like that too, present in a way that made you feel truly seen. After dinner, Emma began to yawn despite her protests that she wasn't tired. Jack checked the weather radar on his phone. The storm's intensity had diminished, but rain still fell steadily. I should probably call a cab, Rebecca said, noticing his concern. The roads should be passable now. Jack hesitated. It's still pretty bad out there. He glanced toward Emma's room where she'd gone to put on pajamas. We have a guest room. It's small, more of an office with a futon, really. But you're welcome to stay the night if you'd prefer not to venture out. Rebecca seemed taken aback by the offer. I wouldn't want to impose. Please stay. Emma appeared in the hallway already in her cloud-patterned pajamas. We can have pancakes for breakfast, and you can help me read more. And Emma let Rebecca decide. Jack gently interrupted, though he found himself hoping she would stay. Rebecca looked between them, her expression softening. Pancakes do sound tempting, she admitted with a smile. If you're sure it's not too much trouble. No trouble at all, Jack assured her, ignoring the quickening of his pulse. While Jack set up the futon in the small second bedroom, Emma insisted on showing Rebecca her stuffed animal collection, introducing each one with elaborate backstories. Jack smiled, listening to them from the hallway. Emma hadn't been this animated with anyone since Catherine died. Once Emma was finally in bed, Jack joined Rebecca in the living room, where she transferred from her wheelchair to the couch. The rain continued to patter against the windows, but the thunder had moved on, leaving a gentle, rhythmic soundtrack. Thank you for this, Rebecca said quietly. It's been a long time since I've had a family dinner. Jack settled into the armchair across from her. Thank you for being so wonderful with Emma. She doesn't connect with people easily since her mom died. Rebecca's eyes held understanding rather than pity. Loss changes children. They build walls to protect themselves from feeling that pain again. You sound like you know from experience, Jack observed. My mother died when I was 12. Cancer. Rebecca's fingers traced an invisible pattern on the couch cushion. My father's response was to throw himself into work and send me to boarding school. Well-intentioned, but not what a grieving child needs. Jack nodded. That's what I worry about most with Emma. Am I doing enough? Am I present enough? He hadn't meant to reveal so much, but something about Rebecca made it easy to open up. From what I've seen, you're doing an amazing job, Rebecca said softly. She's secure, confident, and kind. Those don't develop in children who don't feel loved. Her words eased a weight Jack hadn't realized he was carrying. Thank you. That means a lot, especially from someone with your background and education. A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that didn't need to be filled with words. Jack found himself studying Rebecca's profile as she gazed out at the rain. The straight line of her nose, the curve of her cheek, the way her borrowed t-shirt slipped slightly off one shoulder. She was beautiful, but it was more than that. There was a strength in her that drew him a resilience that matched his own. Rebecca turned, catching him watching her. His cheeks warmed, but he didn't look away. Her phone chimed before either could speak, breaking the moment. She checked the screen, her expression shifting subtly. Everything okay, Jack asked? Just my father? She sighed, setting the phone down without responding. He checks in every night. If I don't answer, he'll probably send out search parties. Sounds like he cares about you, Jack observed carefully. Rebecca's smile held a hint of sadness. He does intensely, too intensely sometimes. After the accident, he became protective, controlling. She shook her head. I'm 32 years old, but sometimes he treats me like I'm made of glass. Jack understood overprotectiveness. He'd caught himself being too cautious with Emma many times, limiting her out of fear rather than reason. Does he know where you are now? Rebecca laughed softly. If I told him I was spending the night at a single father's apartment after meeting him a few weeks ago, Howard Stewart would probably arrive with a security team to rescue me. That bad, huh? He means well. Rebecca's expression softened. The accident was hard on him too. I was always his perfect daughter. Stanford graduate athlete following in his professional footsteps. Then suddenly I was in a wheelchair, changing careers, needing help with things I'd always done independently. She picked up her phone, typing a quick message. I just told him I'm staying with a friend because of the storm. Technically true. Jack felt a strange warmth at being considered Rebecca's friend. It had been a long time since he'd made a new connection that wasn't related to work or Emma's school. Rebecca's phone chimed again immediately, making her roll her eyes. And now he wants to know which friend, their address, and probably their credit score and criminal background check. Should I be worried? Jack asked with a half smile. Rebecca's laugh was genuine. Only if you're hiding a secret identity as an international art thief. Darn, you've discovered my side hustle. Jack's joke earned another laugh, and he found himself craving the sound of it. She didn't laugh enough, he suspected. Neither did he. They talked for another hour, the conversation flowing easily between childhood memories, favorite books, and their most embarrassing moments. Jack found himself sharing stories about Catherine that he hadn't voiced in years. Not the sad ones about her illness and death, but the joyful ones, the silly moments that had defined their relationship. For the first time, remembering her brought more warmth than pain. When Rebecca finally yawned, Jack showed her to the small guest room. Emma made the sign for the door. She was determined to make it special with her butterfly stickers. It's perfect, Rebecca said, genuinely touched by the child's gesture. Bathrooms across the hall if you need anything. Jack hesitated at the doorway. Thank you again for today, for everything with Emma. Thank you for the shelter from the storm, Rebecca replied softly. And the company. Their eyes held for a moment longer than necessary before Jack reluctantly stepped back. Good night, Rebecca. Good night, Jack. As he lay in bed later listening to the diminishing rain, Jack found his thoughts circling back to Rebecca. The way she spoke to Emma was such respect. The strength in her arms as she lifted herself from wheelchair to couch. The intelligence in her eyes when she talked about her work. The vulnerability when she mentioned her father. For 3 years, he'd existed rather than lived, focusing entirely on Emma and work keeping other relationships at arm's length. Now, unexpectedly, he felt something awakening. An awareness, an interest, a possibility. The realization both thrilled and terrified him. He rolled over, his eyes falling on the framed photo of Catherine on his nightstand. What would she think about Rebecca? About his growing feelings? Somehow he knew she would approve. Catherine had always pushed him to connect with people, to open himself to experiences. She'd hate the thought of him closing himself off after her death. With that comforting thought, Jack finally drifted to sleep, the sound of rain, a gentle lullaby against the windows. Morning brought sunshine streaming through the blinds and the scent of coffee brewing. Jack found Rebecca already up, seated in her wheelchair at the kitchen table with Emma beside her, both absorbed in a word game involving paper and colored markers. Dad, Look what Rebecca taught me. I can break big words into little parts. Emma held up a paper where the word butterfly had been broken into butterfly with each syllable in a different color. That's fantastic, pumpkin. Jack pours himself coffee, offering a cup to Rebecca, who accepted gratefully. Sleep okay? Better than I expected on a futon, Rebecca said with a smile. Emma's been keeping me entertained while you slept in. Jack glanced at the clock, 8:30 a.m. He rarely slept past 7. Sorry about that. You needed it. Rebecca waved away his apology. Besides, Emma and I had important work to do. She's learning syllable division, a key skill for reading longer words. Jack watched them together, a warm contentment spreading through his chest. This felt right somehow, the three of them in the morning light, Rebecca's patient guidance, Emma's eager learning. For a moment, he allowed himself to imagine more mornings like this. The fantasy shattered when Rebecca's phone rang. She checked the screen and sighed. My father, I should take this. She wheeled herself into the living room for privacy. Jack busied himself making pancake batter, while Emma set the table, but he couldn't help overhearing fragments of Rebecca's conversation. Yes, Dad, I'm fine. No, you don't need to. I'm perfectly capable of. That's completely unnecessary. When she returned to the kitchen, her expression was tense. I'm sorry, but I need to head home soon. My father is being insistent, Jack nodded, hiding his disappointment. Of course. Can I drive you? Might be easier than calling a cab. Rebecca hesitated, then nodded. That would be helpful, thank you. The pancake breakfast was still cheerful, with Emma demonstrating her newfound syllable skills on food words, pancake, and syrup featuring prominently, but Jack sensed Rebecca's distraction. Whatever her father had said had cast a shadow over the morning. After breakfast, Rebecca changed back into her now dry clothes from the day before, while Jack packed up the leftovers in a container for her to take home. Emma drew a quick picture of the three of them, presenting it to Rebecca with shy pride. So you don't forget our sleepover, she explained. Rebecca's eyes softened as she accepted the drawing. I couldn't possibly forget. This was one of the nicest evenings I've had in a very long time. When they were ready to leave, Jack helped load Rebecca's wheelchair into the trunk of his aging sedan. Emma insisted on riding in the back, where she kept up a steady stream of conversation about everything they passed on the drive. Rebecca gave directions to a neighborhood on the other side of town, one Jack had only seen from a distance. As they drew closer, the houses grew larger, the lawns more manicured. It's the white one on the left, Rebecca finally said, pointing to a sprawling single-story home with a circular driveway. Jack tried to keep his expression neutral, but the house was easily 4 times the size of his entire apartment building. Pristine landscaping surrounded the property, and even from the street he could see the expensive fixtures and materials that had gone into its construction. As he pulled into the driveway, the front door opened. A tall, distinguished-looking man with silver hair stepped onto the porch, his posture rigid, his gaze fixed on Jack's car with undisguised suspicion. Howard Stewart, Jack presumed. That's my dad. Rebecca confirmed, tension evident in her voice. I'm sorry in advance for whatever he says or does. Jack squeezed her hand briefly. No apologies needed. He got out and retrieved the wheelchair from the trunk, helping Rebecca transfer into it, with practiced ease that belied how new their acquaintance was. Emma bounded out of the back seat, immediately distracted by a small fountain bubbling in the front garden. Rebecca, Howard called, coming down the front steps. I was concerned when you didn't come home last night. As I told you, there was a storm, Dad. Rebecca's voice held forced patience. This is Jack Miller and his daughter Emma. They kindly offered me shelter when the roads flooded. Howard's appraising gaze swept over Jack, taking in his worn jeans, faded t-shirt, and the decade-old sedan behind him. Thank you for assisting my daughter, Mr. Miller. His tone was polite but cool, the words more dismissal than gratitude. Jack extended his hand. Nice to meet you, Mr. Stewart. Rebecca's been a tremendous help with my daughter's reading challenges. She has a real gift for teaching. Howard shook Jack's hand briefly, his grip firm but impersonal. Yes, she was quite promising in that field. He turned to Rebecca. Charlotte has prepared lunch, and I have some matters to discuss with you. The dismissal was clear. Rebecca's shoulders tensed, but she nodded before turning back to Jack with an apologetic smile. Thank you again for everything, Jack, and thank you, Emma, for sharing your books with me. Emma, who had rejoined them, looked between the adults with a child's perception of tension. Will we see you at the grocery store next Saturday? Rebecca glanced at her father, then back at Emma with genuine warmth. I certainly hope so. As Jack helped Emma back into the car, he caught Howard saying to Rebecca in a low voice, his back to them, my dear, I understand your independence, but staying overnight with strangers is hardly appropriate for someone in your position. Jack couldn't hear Rebecca's response, but her posture spoke volumes. Straight back chin raised the same dignity she'd shown when confronting Frank Harrison. He found himself admiring her all over again, even as concern crept in. Howard Stewart was clearly a controlling presence in her life, one that might complicate whatever was growing between them. As they drove away, Emma studied his face from the back seat. Dad, is Rebecca in trouble with her dad? Jack chose his words carefully. Sometimes parents worry too much, pumpkin, especially when they love someone a lot. Like how you won't let me cross the street by myself even though I know to look both ways. Jack smiled despite himself. Something like that. The apartment felt strangely empty when they returned. Jack busied himself with weekend chores while Emma played in her room, but his thoughts kept returning to Rebecca, the way she'd fit so naturally into their small home. The contrast between the easy warmth of their evening and the cold formality of Howard Stewart's greeting. The question of whether she would indeed meet them next Saturday as planned. That night, as Jack tucked Emma into bed, she asked drowsily, do you like Rebecca, Dad? Like her? Jack paused, caught off guard by his daughter's perceptiveness. She's very nice, he said carefully. Mom would like her, Emma mumbled, already half asleep. She helps people and makes you smile. You don't smile enough, Dad. Jack's throat tightened. He brushed the hair from Emma's forehead, pressing a kiss to her temple. Go to sleep, pumpkin. Later, alone in the living room, Jack found himself staring at Rebecca's empty coffee cup still sitting in the dish drainer. Emma's observation had struck a chord. He didn't smile enough, didn't live enough. Had Rebecca somehow awakened something he'd thought was permanently dormant? His phone buzzed with a text message from an unknown number. Thank you again for the rescue. Sorry about my father. Some people struggle to see beyond their own fears. Would still love to meet you and Emma next Saturday if that's okay. Rebecca, Jack's smile came easily as he typed his response. No apologies needed. Emma would be devastated if we missed our Saturday routine. So would I. He hesitated, then added, your father seems to care about you. That's never a bad thing, even when it's complicated. Rebecca's reply came quickly. Complicated is the perfect word. He means well, but sees the chair first, not me. Sound familiar? Jack thought of Frank Harrison and his prejudice of all the people who saw Rebecca's wheelchair before they saw her intelligence, humor, and strength. Too familiar. Their loss. After a moment's pause, he typed again. Emma said something tonight that stuck with me. She said I don't smile enough. Haven't for 3 years. Today I did. The 3 dots appeared, disappeared, then reappeared as Rebecca composed her response. When it finally came, it was simple but perfect. Me too, Jack. Me too. The Stewart estate loomed before Jack like something from another world. Pristine white columns flanked the entrance, and meticulously trimmed hedges lined the circular driveway where his weathered pickup truck now sat conspicuously out of place. Emma bounced in her seat beside him, clutching a book she'd been practicing in all week, eager to show Rebecca her progress. This is where Rebecca lives. Emma's eyes widened as she took in the sprawling, single-story mansion. It looks like a castle, Jack adjusted his collar, suddenly conscious of his best flannel shirt's frayed edges. This was the 4th Saturday they had arranged to meet Rebecca at Simmons's grocery, but their usual routine had been interrupted by a text message that morning. Father insists on hosting a lunch at the house. Would you and Emma join us? I understand if it's too uncomfortable. He'd almost declined. The memory of Howard Stewart's dismissive glance still rankled, and the thought of sitting across a formal dining table from the man made Jack's stomach tighten. But Emma's disappointment at potentially missing her reading session with Rebecca had been so profound that Jack found himself responding with the simple, we'll be there. Now facing the reality of the Stewart mansion, Jack questioned his decision. The distance between their worlds stretched before him as tangible as the manicured lawn separating his truck from the gleaming front door. Dad, come on. Emma was already unbuckling her seatbelt, impatient to see Rebecca. Taking a deep breath, Jack stepped out of the truck, helping Emma down from the passenger seat. They'd barely reached the front steps when the door swung open, revealing Rebecca in her wheelchair, a genuine smile lighting her face at the sight of them. You came. The relief in Rebecca's voice confirmed Jack had made the right choice despite his misgivings. Emma rushed forward, already opening her book. "Rebecca, look how much I practiced. I can read the whole first chapter now." Rebecca welcomed them inside, where the interior proved even more impressive than the exterior. Soaring ceilings artwork that probably cost more than Jack's annual salary and furnishings that belonged in a design magazine. Yet he couldn't help noticing the ramps subtly integrated into the architecture, the wider doorways, the accessible height of counters and switches, all evidence of thoughtful adaptations to Rebecca's needs. Howard Stewart emerged from what appeared to be a home office, his expression carefully neutral as he approached. "Welcome, Mr. Miller." "Miss Miller," his attention focused briefly on Emma. "Rebecca tells me you're making remarkable progress with your reading." Emma nodded solemnly. "Rebecca is the best teacher ever. Better than school." A flicker of pride crossed Howard's face as he glanced at his daughter. Yes, she always had a gift for education. "The table is set for lunch in the sunroom. Shall we?" The sunroom proved to be a glass-enclosed space overlooking gardens that stretched toward a small lake. The table was set with linens and silver that made Jack increasingly conscious of his calloused hands and casual clothing. A uniformed woman, Charlotte Jack presumed from Rebecca's earlier texts, served an elaborate lunch that Emma regarded with suspicious fascination. "What exactly do you do in construction?" For Miller, Howard's question came after several minutes of awkward small talk about the weather and local news. Jack set down his water glass carefully. "I'm a finished carpenter for Sullivan Construction, and I do custom furniture on the side, mostly restoration and bespoke pieces." Howard nodded, his expression revealing nothing. "And this supports you and your daughter adequately?" Rebecca's eyes flashed. "Dad, it's a fair question," Jack responded, meeting Howard's gaze evenly. "I do well enough. Emma has everything she needs and occasionally some of what she wants." A subtle test passed, Howard's posture relaxed marginally. "I understand you lost your wife. My condolences. Thank you." Jack didn't elaborate. 3 years had dulled the pain's edge, but discussing Catherine with this man felt inappropriate somehow, as if Howard were assessing her absence as a liability. The conversation shifted to safer topics, with Rebecca describing Emma's reading progress, and Emma proudly demonstrating by reading aloud from the dessert menu. Throughout the meal, Jack observed the dynamic between Rebecca and her father, the tension beneath their cordial interactions, the way Howard subtly dominated conversations, and Rebecca's occasional sharp glances when he overstepped. After lunch, Howard excused himself for a business call, and Rebecca suggested showing them the grounds. The wheelchair-accessible pathways wound through gardens that burst with early summer blooms, eventually leading to a modern outbuilding that Rebecca explained was her home office. Inside, the space was organized with sleek efficiency, multiple computer screens, graphic design references, and evidence of Rebecca's web development work. Emma was immediately drawn to a drawing tablet connected to one of the computers. "This is where I work," Rebecca explained, visibly more relaxed away from the main house. "My little sanctuary. It's incredible," Jack admitted, taking in the professional setup. "You've built quite a business for yourself." Rebecca's smile held a hint of pride. 4 years of steady growth. "I started with small, local clients, but now I'm designing for companies across the country." She hesitated, then added quietly, "It's mine, not my father's, not his connections or his influence, just mine." The distinction clearly mattered to her, and Jack understood why. Independence from Howard Stewart's shadow seemed an ongoing battle for Rebecca, one she was determined to win on her own terms. Emma had discovered a shelf of children's books in the corner. "Rebecca keeps books here for when kids visit." She looked confused, turning to Rebecca for explanation. A shadow crossed Rebecca's face. "I used to run reading workshops for children with learning difficulties." Before, she gestured vaguely at her wheelchair. "I haven't done it since the accident." Why not? Emma's directness, unfiltered by adult sensitivity, hung in the air. Rebecca wheeled closer to Emma, her voice softening. "Sometimes when big things change in our lives, we let go of things we shouldn't. Maybe it's time I started again." The moment was interrupted by Emma's excited discovery of an illustrated science book, drawing Rebecca into an explanation of constellations that Jack observed from a slight distance. The easy rapport between them had deepened over the past month, and watching them together stirred complicated feelings in Jack. Gratitude, hope, and a growing attachment he wasn't entirely ready to confront. A notification chimed on Rebecca's computer, drawing her attention momentarily. Jack glanced at the screen and froze. The website layout displayed there was unmistakably for Stewart Enterprises' new development project, Westside Market Square. He knew that location. It was the district where Gino's woodshop operated, the small business where Jack sourced specialized tools and materials for his custom furniture work. The area was home to dozens of family-owned businesses, many operating for generations in the old brick buildings that gave the neighborhood its character. "What is this?" Jack couldn't keep the edge from his voice as he gestured toward the screen. Rebecca turned, registering his expression with confusion. "It's a website for my father's new commercial development. I'm handling the digital marketing. You're working on the Westside Market Square project. Do you know what that development is replacing?" Rebecca's brow furrowed. "Mixed-use retail space replacing some older buildings from what I understand. Why those older buildings house about 30 small businesses that will be forced out. Gino's Woodshop, Martelli's Bakery, the Community Arts Center. Places that have been there for decades." Jack ran a hand through his hair, struggling to moderate his tone with Emma present. "They're demolishing an entire neighborhood for another soulless shopping complex." Rebecca's expression shifted from confusion to concern. "I didn't know that. My father just commissioned the website. I haven't been involved in the planning." The sound of Howard's wheelchair-accessible Tesla pulling up outside interrupted their conversation. Through the window, Jack could see him exiting the vehicle, accompanied by a man in an expensive suit carrying architectural drawings. "I should get Emma home." Jack's voice was carefully controlled. "Thank you for lunch." Rebecca wheeled forward, distress evident in her eyes. "Jack, wait. Let me talk to my father about this. There must be something that can be done." Their eyes met, and the connection that had been building between them seemed suddenly fragile, stretched thin by the revelation of Rebecca's unwitting involvement in a project that threatened Jack's community. Emma looked between them, picking up on the tension with a child's intuitive sensitivity. "Are we leaving?" "But we didn't do my reading lesson." Emma's disappointed voice made Jack's chest tighten with conflicting responsibilities. Before Jack could respond, the door opened and Howard entered, accompanied by his associate. "Rebecca, I wanted to show you the updated renderings for the West Side project." He stopped short at the sight of Jack's expression. "Is everything all right, Mr. Stewart? Did you know that your West Side development is displacing dozens of local businesses?" Jack kept his tone respectful but firm, aware of Emma watching the interaction closely. Howard's expression cooled instantly. "Business decisions are rarely without consequences. Mr. Miller, the area is underperforming economically. Our development will create 3 times the push and significantly increase the tax base for community improvements. Those businesses are people's livelihoods, their legacies. There's more value there than shows up on a balance sheet." Jack felt Rebecca's eyes on him but kept his focus on Howard. "Sentiment doesn't pay property taxes or create economic growth." Howard's tone was dismissive. "The buildings are outdated, the infrastructure failing. Progress requires change. Progress without preservation isn't progress at all. It's erasure." Jack's carpenter hands curled at his sides, not in threat but in frustration. "Those craftspeople can't simply relocate to your shiny new development with triple the rent." Rebecca wheeled forward, positioning herself between them. "Dad, could we at least look at options for incorporating some of the existing businesses into the new development? Maybe with subsidized rates for the first few years?" Howard's eyebrows rose at his daughter's intervention. "Since when are you interested in the business side of development? I thought you were quite content with your websites. This is about community, not just business." Rebecca's voice strengthened. "If we're going to promote this project online, I need to believe it's not just destroying what matters to people." The tension in the room thickened as father and daughter engaged in a silent battle of wills. Jack placed a protective hand on Emma's shoulder. Suddenly feeling like an intruder in a family conflict his presence had catalyzed. Howard finally broke the standoff, turning to his associate. "Charles, wait for me in the main house. I need a moment with my daughter and our guests." Once the man had departed, Howard's attention returned to Rebecca. "You're suggesting I alter a $50 million development plan because your friend has sentimental attachments to outdated buildings? I'm suggesting you consider the human impact of your investments." Not just the financial return. Rebecca held her ground. Isn't that what Mom would have wanted? The mention of Rebecca's mother visibly affected Howard, a flash of something vulnerable crossing his face before his businessman's mask returned. We'll discuss this privately, Rebecca. His attention shifted to Jack and Emma. Thank you for coming. Mr. Miller, I believe you mentioned needing to get home. The dismissal was unmistakable. Jack hesitated, torn between supporting Rebecca in what was clearly an important stand against her father and respecting the family boundaries. Emma solved his dilemma by stepping forward and handing her book to Rebecca. I practiced the whole chapter. Can we do our lesson next Saturday? Her innocent question cut through the adult tension with perfect clarity. Rebecca's expression softened as she took the book. Absolutely, Emma. I wouldn't miss it. Outside in his truck, Jack sat motionless for a moment, processing the confrontation. Emma buckled her seatbelt, uncharacteristically quiet. Is Rebecca in trouble because of us? She finally asked as Jack started the engine. Not because of us, Pumpkin. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about important things. That doesn't mean they don't care about each other. As they pulled away from the Stewart estate, Jack glanced in the rearview mirror. Rebecca had wheeled herself onto the front portico and was watching them leave, a solitary figure framed by the mansion's imposing columns. For the first time since they'd met, Jack wondered if the distance between their worlds might be too great to bridge. The week that followed passed with unnatural slowness. Jack threw himself into work, taking on extra restoration projects that kept him in his workshop until late evening. Emma noticed his distraction, her perceptive questions about Rebecca becoming more frequent as Saturday approached with no word about their usual meeting. When Jack's phone finally chimed with a message on Friday afternoon, he nearly dropped his sanding block in his haste to check it. Need to talk. Significant developments with Westside Project. Coffee at Monarch Cafe tomorrow, 10 a.m. Just us first, then meet Emma Bao after. The message was distinctly different from Rebecca's usual warm texts. All business, no personal connection. Jack responded with a simple confirmation apprehension, settling in his stomach like a stone. He arranged for Emma to spend the morning with her friend Zoe, promising to pick her up by noon. Monarch Cafe occupied the ground floor of a renovated bank building, downtown as Art Deco interior, and premium coffee making it a favorite among the city's business professionals. Jack arrived early, feeling out of place in his cleanest work clothes among the sleek laptops and business attire of the Saturday morning crowd. Rebecca appeared precisely at 10, navigating her wheelchair through the cafe with practiced efficiency. The week had changed her, a new tension around her eyes, a determined set to her jaw that hadn't been there before. She ordered a black coffee and wheeled herself to the table Jack had secured in a quiet corner. Thank you for coming. Her greeting was polite but distant, setting Jack's nerves further on edge. Of course, he waited as she arranged her notes on the table, noticing the Stewart Enterprises letterhead on several documents. What's happening with the project? Rebecca met his eyes directly. After you left last Saturday, I had a long conversation with my father. Several, actually. She passed him a folder. I've spent the week researching alternatives and building a case for a modified development approach. Jack opened the folder to find architectural renderings of a revised West Side Market project. Instead of the sleek, homogeneous structure from the original plans, these drawings showed a design that incorporated several of the existing historic facades, with a central courtyard and what appeared to be subsidized spaces for existing businesses. He studied the plans, hardly daring to believe what he was seeing. You did this in a week. I've never challenged my father directly on a business decision before. Rebecca's fingers tapped nervously on her coffee cup. But this felt important, worth fighting for, and he agreed Jack couldn't keep the skepticism from his voice. Conditionally. Rebecca's expression was complex, part pride, part exhaustion. He's allowing a pilot approach for the first phase, incorporating these modifications. If the financial projections hold, the rest of the development will follow the new model. Jack set down the plans, studying Rebecca's face. You put yourself on the line with your father. For businesses you don't even know. Why, her gaze didn't waver. Not just for them, for myself too. I've spent 5 years letting my father make decisions because he thought the accident made me incapable. It was easier to focus on my web design and stay in my lane. She leaned forward slightly. You made me realize I was hiding Jack, accepting limitations that had nothing to do with my wheelchair and everything to do with fear. The admission hung between them, shifting the energy of their interaction from business to something far more personal. Jack reached across the table, his calloused fingers resting lightly beside her hand without quite touching it. Thank you for standing up for my community, for believing it mattered. His voice roughened with emotion he hadn't intended to reveal. Rebecca turned her hand over, palm up, an invitation he accepted, her fingers warm as they closed around his. It does matter, and so does this, whatever this is between us. The moment stretched between them, full of unspoken possibilities. Then Rebecca gently withdrew her hand, straightening the papers before her with renewed focus. There's something else you should know. I've decided to restart my reading workshops for children with learning differences. Her eyes brightened with a passion Jack hadn't seen before. I've already spoken with the community center. They have an accessible space available on Tuesday evenings. That's wonderful. Emma will be thrilled. Jack's pride in her decision was genuine even as he processed the rapid developments of the past week. I want to start small, maybe 5 or 6 children to begin with. Rebecca hesitated, then continued more softly. Emma's progress has reminded me how much I love teaching, how much I missed it without fully realizing what I'd given up. Jack nodded, understanding completely. After Catherine died, he'd abandoned furniture design for months, focusing only on the practical carpentry that paid the bills. Returning to his passion had been part of his healing, a reclamation of self beyond grief and responsibility. They finished their coffee, the conversation shifting to logistics for the reading workshop, then to Emma's progress, and finally circling back to plans for their usual Saturday routine. The business-like distance that had marked the beginning of their meeting gradually melted away, replaced by the easy connection that had been building between them over the past month. As they left the cafe, Jack found himself walking beside Rebecca's wheelchair toward the parking area, reluctant for their time alone to end. Should I pick up Emma and meet you at Simmons in an hour? Rebecca stopped, turning to face him. Actually, I was thinking we might try something different today. There's a children's science museum exhibit on space exploration that just opened. Emma mentioned she's been learning about planets in school. The suggestion surprised Jack, a departure from their established routine that hinted at a desire for something more intentional than their casual weekly meetings. That sounds great. She'd love that. Their eyes met, and Jack felt the subtle shift in what remained unspoken between them. Rebecca's smile returned, the tension of the past week visibly easing from her shoulders. So would I. The Science Museum bustled with weekend activity, children darting between interactive exhibits, while parents followed at more sedate paces. Emma had been ecstatic about the change in plans, particularly when Rebecca revealed she'd arranged a special behind-the-scenes tour through a connection at the museum. Jack watched as Emma and Rebecca examined a scale model of the solar system, Rebecca explaining planetary orbits with the same patient enthusiasm she brought to reading lessons. The ease between them had only deepened over the past weeks, their connection evolving into something that increasingly resembled a genuine family bond. The observation both warmed and unsettled him. Since Catherine's death, he'd structured his entire existence around protecting Emma from further loss, around maintaining stability in a world that had already taken too much from her. Opening their lives to Rebecca meant vulnerability for both of them. Dad, come look at the moon rocks. Emma's excited call pulled Jack from his thoughts. Rebecca had navigated her wheelchair to an exhibit where visitors could touch actual lunar samples, and Emma was staring in wonder at the ancient stones. As Jack joined them, a museum guide approached with a tablet. Miss Stewart, we have that special equipment ready for the solar flare demonstration you inquired about, for your group only as requested. Rebecca thanked the guide, exchanging a conspiratorial glance with Emma that told Jack they'd planned something without his knowledge. The guide led them to a darkened room where specialized projectors created a breathtaking simulation of solar activity, complete with magnetic field visualizations that swirled around them in 3 dimensions. Emma's face was transformed with wonder as the guide explained how solar flares affected Earth's atmosphere, creating the northern lights. Jack found himself equally captivated, not just by the display, but by the thoughtfulness behind it. Rebecca had clearly researched Emma's interests and arranged this experience specifically for her. When the demonstration ended, the guide presented Emma with a junior astronomer certificate and a small telescope. Courtesy of Ms. Stewart, the woman explained with a smile. Rebecca, this is too much. Jack's protest was gentle but firm as they moved toward the museum cafe for lunch. Rebecca shook her head. I had that telescope in storage from before my accident. I used to be quite the amateur astronomer. Her expression grew nostalgic. It was gathering dust honestly. Now it can help foster Emma's interest in science. The afternoon passed in a blur of exhibits, learning, and laughter. By the time they reached the gift shop, Emma was yawning despite her protest that she wasn't tired at all. Jack purchased a small astronaut keychain for her backpack, while Rebecca waited near the exit checking messages on her phone. When Jack approached, Rebecca's expression was troubled. "Everything okay?" "My father," Rebecca put her phone away with a sigh. "He's called 3 times. Apparently there's an urgent business matter requiring my input." She made air quotes around the phrase, her frustration evident. "It's his way of keeping tabs on me, creating false emergencies to test my response time." Jack recognized the pattern from her previous descriptions of Howard's controlling behaviors. "Do you need to go?" Rebecca hesitated, clearly torn between obligation and desire. "I should at least call him back. Make sure it's not actually important." Her expression softened as she glanced at Emma, who was examining her new keychain with drowsy fascination. "But I don't want this day to end yet." The admission hung between them, weighted with implications neither had fully articulated. Jack made a spontaneous decision. "Why don't you come over for dinner? Nothing fancy, just pasta. You can make your call, and then we can continue our day without your father's interruptions." Rebecca's smile returned, grateful and genuine. "I'd like that very much." Dinner preparations became a team effort in Jack's small kitchen. Rebecca chopped vegetables from her wheelchair, while Jack boiled pasta, and Emma set the table with unusual care, even finding a candle stub from her birthday cake to place in the center. Rebecca's call with her father had been brief but tense, conducted in the privacy of Jack's bedroom, while he and Emma prepared the meal. When she returned to the kitchen, her expression was carefully controlled, but Jack could sense her frustration. "Everything all right?" he asked quietly as Emma arranged napkins at each place setting. "Just Howard being Howard." Rebecca's voice was low enough that Emma wouldn't hear. "The emergency was that he'd invited potential investors for dinner tomorrow and wanted me there. When I explained I already had plans, he implied that my priorities were becoming concerning to him." Jack winced. "He's worried about your involvement with us. With you specifically, I think." Rebecca's honesty was matter of fact. "He's convinced you're after Stewart money, despite all evidence to the contrary." The pasta timer dinged, saving Jack from having to respond immediately. As he drained the noodles at the sink, he processed Rebecca's words. Howard's suspicion was insulting, but not surprising. The wealthy often viewed relationships through the distorting lens of their money. What troubled Jack more was the realization that his growing feelings for Rebecca would inevitably mean navigating Howard's opposition, perhaps indefinitely. Dinner conversation stayed deliberately light, with Emma dominating the discussion with enthusiastic recounting of her favorite museum exhibits. Both adults were content to let her chatter fill the space between them, the earlier tension gradually dissipating in the warmth of the simple meal. After dinner, Emma insisted on showing Rebecca her small collection of science books, leaving Jack to clean up the kitchen. He was loading the dishwasher when his phone rang. Gino from the wood shop, an unusual call for a Saturday evening. "Jack, have you heard?" Gino's accented voice was animated with excitement. About the West Side project, Jack glanced toward Emma's room, where he could hear her and Rebecca discussing constellations. "I know there are some new plans being considered. They came to the shop today. Stewart Enterprises people. Showed me designs for keeping our building, offering 5-year lease with controlled rates." Gino's voice cracked slightly. "My father opened this shop in 1962. I thought for sure we were finished." "That's fantastic news, Gino." Jack felt a surge of gratitude toward Rebecca, knowing she'd been instrumental in this outcome. "Did they approach other businesses too?" "Many of us, yes. Community meeting next week to discuss details. You should come. Bring the lady who made this happen. Word is getting around that Stewart's daughter fought for us." Jack promised to pass along the invitation, ending the call with a lightness he hadn't felt in days. When he joined Rebecca and Emma in the bedroom, he found them lying on their backs on Emma's rug, using a flashlight and colander to project stars onto the ceiling. The childhood science trick made Jack smile. Points of light scattered across the ceiling through the colander's holes, creating a makeshift planetarium. Emma was pointing out imaginary constellations, while Rebecca added fictional stories about each one. Room for one more astronomer. Jack lowered himself to the floor beside them, careful not to disturb their projection setup. Emma scooted closer to Rebecca to make space for him. We're making up new constellations, Dad. Rebecca says the official ones are boring. Jack lay back, shoulder to shoulder with Rebecca, as Emma held the flashlight steady. The proximity was simultaneously comfortable and charged with awareness, Rebecca's arm warm against his. That one looks like a dragon, Jack offered, pointing to a cluster of dots near the corner of the ceiling. Emma giggled. That's what I said. But Rebecca thinks it's a sea serpent. Clearly, artistic interpretation is subjective in astronomy. Rebecca laughed, turning her head slightly toward Jack. Their faces were unexpectedly close, her eyes reflecting the pinpricks of light from their makeshift stars. Time seemed to suspend itself in that moment. Three people lying on a child's bedroom floor, creating imaginary worlds in shadows and light. For Jack, it crystallized everything that had been building over the past weeks. The sense of possibility of family, of a future term he hadn't allowed himself to imagine since Catherine's death. The moment broke when Emma yawned widely, unable to fight off exhaustion any longer, despite her protests. Jack instituted bedtime procedures while Rebecca excused herself to make a quick call, promising Emma they'd continue their astronomical explorations another day. After tucking Emma in, Jack found Rebecca in the living room, her wheelchair positioned near the window overlooking the city lights. She seemed lost in thought, her expression pensive in the soft lamplight. Penny, for your thoughts, Jack settled onto the sofa near her. Rebecca turned from the window with a small smile. I just got off the phone with my father again. He's quite insistent that I attend tomorrow's investor dinner. Jack nodded, expecting this development. You should go. Family obligations are important. Even when the family in question is attempting to micromanage your life. Rebecca's tone was wry, but without real bitterness. Howard means well in his way. He's just never adapted to the idea that the accident changed my circumstances, not my capabilities. Jack considered this understanding more clearly the parallels in their situations. After Catherine died, her parents had treated him similarly, as if grief had rendered him incapable of raising Emma properly, as if he needed constant supervision and guidance. People who love us sometimes confuse protection with control, he observed, especially after trauma. Rebecca wheeled closer to the sofa, her expression softening. That's exactly it. The frustrating part is knowing his behavior comes from love, even while resenting the limitations it imposes. A comfortable silence settled between them, the kind that had become increasingly familiar over their weeks of friendship. Jack found himself studying the curve of Rebecca's cheek in the lamplight, the thoughtful set of her mouth, the strength evident in her posture even after a long and tiring day. Gino called earlier, Jack finally said. From the wood shop. He wanted me to thank you for what you did with the development plans. They approached him today with the new proposal. Rebecca's face brightened. They moved quickly. I didn't expect implementation for at least another week. You've made a significant difference for those businesses. For the whole neighborhood, really. The sincerity in Jack's voice caused a slight flush to rise in Rebecca's cheeks. I just helped my father see a different perspective. The foundation was already there. He respects community legacy more than he admits. He just needed someone to challenge his assumptions about what constitutes progress. You're too modest. Jack leaned forward slightly. You stood up to one of the most powerful developers in the city and changed the course of a multi-million-dollar project. That takes courage and conviction. Rebecca's eyes met his vulnerability and strength, equally evident in her gaze. I'm learning to use my voice again, in more ways than one. The undercurrent in her words wasn't lost on Jack. Their relationship had evolved beyond Emma's reading lesson, beyond casual friendship, into something neither had fully defined. The question of what came next hung between them unspoken, but increasingly difficult to ignore. I should probably go, Rebecca said softly, though she made no immediate move to leave. It's getting late, Jack nodded, equally reluctant to end the evening. I'll drive you home. The drive to Rebecca's house passed mostly in comfortable silence, the radio playing quietly as they navigated the nighttime streets. When they arrived at the Stewart estate, Jack helped Rebecca with her wheelchair, the routine now familiar between them. Thank you for today, Rebecca said as she settled into her chair. The museum dinner, all of it, Jack knelt slightly to meet her eye level, a gesture of respect that had become habitual. Thank you for everything you did for the West Side businesses, and for being so wonderful with Emma. Their eyes held for a long moment, the connection between them almost tangible in the quiet night. Jack found himself leaning forward, slightly drawn by an impulse he'd been resisting for weeks. Rebecca's lips parted in silent invitation, and the distance between them narrowed until the front door opened, spilling light across the driveway. Howard Stewart stood silhouetted in the doorway, his timing too perfect to be coincidental. "Rebecca, is that you? I've been waiting to discuss tomorrow's agenda." Rebecca closed her eyes briefly, frustration evident in the set of her shoulders. She turned toward the house with a composed expression. "Yes, Dad, I'll be right in." Howard remained in the doorway, his presence an effective barrier to any private goodbye. Jack straightened, keeping his expression neutral despite the disappointment coursing through him. "Good night, Rebecca. I'll text you about next Saturday." Rebecca's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. "Good night, Jack. Tell Emma I said sweet dreams." As Jack drove away, he checked the rearview mirror to see Rebecca wheeling herself up the ramp to the front door, Howard's hand on her shoulder, in what could be interpreted as either affection or possession. The image stayed with him long after he returned to his empty apartment, Emma already asleep in her room. He moved through his nighttime routine mechanically, thoughts circling around the almost kiss and Howard's perfectly timed interruption. The evening had clarified something important. His feelings for Rebecca had grown beyond friendship into something he was finally ready to acknowledge and pursue. The question now was whether the obstacles between them, particularly in the form of Howard Stewart, would prove insurmountable. Jack's phone chimed with a text as he was turning out his bedside lamp. Rebecca's name lit up the screen with a simple message. Today was perfect, despite the interruptions. Sleep well. A smile tugged at his lips as he typed his response. It was. We'll finish our conversation another time. Without audience members. Her reply came quickly. I'm counting on it. Jack set his phone aside, a sense of possibility replacing the earlier disappointment. Howard Stewart might control the Stewart estate, but he couldn't dictate Rebecca's heart. As Jack drifted towards sleep, he realized he was looking forward to the future in a way he hadn't since Catherine's death. Not just enduring each day for Emma's sake, but anticipating what might come next in his own life. Outside his window, the city lights mirrored the makeshift stars they'd created, earlier points of brightness in the darkness, new constellations waiting to be named. Sau khi xem xét cả bài và tìm kiếm thêm thông tin, tôi nhận thấy phần 3 cần được viết lại để tạo sự kết nối mạch lạc giữa các phần và phát triển mối quan hệ của nhân vật một cách tự nhiên hơn. Dưới đây là bản viết lại của phần 3, với độ dài 5.000 từ The week following their near miss at the Stewart estate proved transformative. Rebecca's modified West Side development plans gained unanimous approval from the city council, earning her recognition beyond her father's shadow. Local newspapers ran features on the developer's daughter who saved Main Street, complete with photos of Rebecca standing proudly beside shop owners outside their preserved storefronts. Jack's phone lit up with a message one evening as he put final touches on the Miller bookcase. Dad's hosting a reception for the West Side business owners tomorrow. He's expecting you there. The message surprised him. Howard Stewart wasn't known for changing course so dramatically, especially after their interrupted moment in the driveway. Does he know I'm invited? Jack texted back. Rebecca's reply came quickly. It was his suggestion. I'm as shocked as you are. The reception revealed a Howard Stewart few had witnessed, gracious, attentive, and surprisingly knowledgeable about the struggles of small business owners. He introduced Jack not as my daughter's friend, but as the craftsman who alerted us to the community impact of our original plans. The subtle acknowledgement wasn't lost on Jack, though Howard's calculating glances whenever he stood near Rebecca suggested the older man's reservations remained firmly intact. Summer flowed into autumn, bringing change to their evolving relationship. Rebecca launched her reading workshop at the community center with Emma as her enthusiastic assistant. Jack built custom learning tables designed specifically for children with dyslexia, incorporating tactile elements and adjustable heights, including wheelchair accessibility. Together, they transformed a sterile community room into an inviting learning environment that attracted twice as many students as initially expected. Howard maintained a careful distance, neither openly opposing their growing closeness nor welcoming it. His interactions with Jack remained coolly professional, focused entirely on West Side reconstruction matters, or Rebecca's educational program, which he had begun quietly funding through an anonymous Stewart Enterprises grant. October brought Emma's school open house, where her where her remarkable reading progress earned special recognition from her teachers. The evening marked a significant first, Rebecca accompanying them as a family unit navigating the crowded school hallways alongside parents who soon sought her advice about their own struggling readers. "I've never seen Emma this confident," Mrs. Winters, her teacher, observed as they watched Emma proudly showing Rebecca her science project. "She's reading well above grade level now. Whatever you're doing, it's working miracles." Rebecca's eyes met Jack's over the teacher's head, shared pride passing between them. "It's not me, it's Emma. She just needed the right tools." "That's not entirely true," Jack added once Mrs. Winters moved to greet other parents. "You gave her something I couldn't, understanding from someone who's been there." Rebecca reached for his hand, a gesture that had become natural between them. "We make a good team, all three of us." The drive home that evening unfolded in comfortable silence until Emma, drowsy in the back seat, mumbled a question that caught both adults off guard. "Is Rebecca going to live with us someday?" Jack's eyes flicked to the rearview mirror, then briefly to Rebecca beside him. The question hung between them, weighted with implications neither had verbalized despite months of deepening connection. "Would you want that, Pumpkin?" Jack asked carefully. "Yeah," Emma's matter-of-fact response held childlike simplicity. "She makes us happy." Rebecca turned to look at Emma, emotion evident in her voice. "You make me happy too, sweetheart." Later, after Emma had fallen asleep, they sat in Jack's living room, the unspoken question finally finding voice. "We should talk about where this is going," Jack said, gesturing between them. "About what we want." Rebecca nodded, an unusual vulnerability crossing her features. "I've been thinking about that too. About us. About what comes next." The conversation that followed stretched late into the night, honest, sometimes difficult, but ultimately clarifying. They discussed practical matters like housing her accessible home made more sense than his apartment, Howard's likely objections, and Emma's adjustment. More importantly, they acknowledged fears, his of losing another partner, hers of gaining, then losing the family connection she'd grown to treasure. "I'm not looking for promises we can't keep," Rebecca said as midnight approached. "Just honesty about what we're building here." Jack reached across the space between them, taking her hands in his. "What we're building is a life, together, if you want that too." Her answer came without hesitation. "I do." A month later, Jack sold his apartment and moved into Rebecca's house, though they maintained separate bedrooms, a concession to Emma's adjustment period and their own desire for thoughtful progression. Howard's reaction proved surprisingly muted, limited to logistical questions about Emma's school transportation and Jack's workshop commute. The lack of outright objection represented progress, even if genuine acceptance remained elusive. Winter arrived with unexpected harmony. Jack converted Rebecca's detached garage into a workshop, installing proper heating and specialized equipment for his custom furniture business. Emma thrived in her new school, where Rebecca's reputation as an educational advocate ensured teachers implemented appropriate dyslexia accommodations. Even Howard found his place in their evolving family structure, Sunday dinners at his estate becoming a tradition that gradually lost their tension as weeks passed. The West Side District's reconstruction proceeded ahead of schedule, with Jack consulting on historical woodwork restoration and Rebecca developing both physical and digital accessibility features for the new buildings. Their professional collaboration strengthened their personal connection, each discovering new facets of the other's capabilities. As spring approached, Rebecca's reading workshops had expanded to 3 evenings weekly, with a waiting list that necessitated consideration of additional instructors. The success sparked conversations about formalizing the program into something more permanent, perhaps a dedicated center for learning differences. Jack watched these discussions with quiet pride, witnessing Rebecca reclaim the teaching passion she'd abandoned after her accident. "You should do it," he encouraged one evening as they reviewed space requirements for a potential dedicated facility. "A real literacy center. You've already proven the concept works." Rebecca's expression held both excitement and uncertainty. "It would mean cutting back on my web design business, taking an actual risk." Jack smiled, recognizing the familiar pattern. Her capabilities far exceeded her self-perception, a legacy of post-accident limitations Howard had inadvertently reinforced. "Some risks are worth taking." "You've transformed 30 kids' relationship with reading in less than a year. Imagine what you could do with proper resources." The center remained theoretical until an unexpected phone call in late March. Howard requested a private dinner with Rebecca without Jack or Emma present. Such exclusionary invitations had grown rare, raising Rebecca's suspicions. "He's probably lined up another neurosurgeon for me to meet," she joked, though anxiety underlay her humor. The matchmaking attempts had ceased months ago, but Howard's acceptance of Jack remained provisional at best. When Rebecca returned from dinner, her expression was unreadable as she wheeled herself into the living room where Jack waited. "My father has offered me a building." She placed architectural drawings on the coffee table, renderings of a fully accessible single-story structure with classroom spaces, assessment rooms, and administrative offices. Jack studied the plans, recognition dawning. "This is in the West Side reconstruction." "It is. One of the damaged buildings. He's offering it at nominal cost with renovation financing." For the Literacy Center, Jack's eyebrows rose. "Howard Stewart doesn't give anything without strings attached." "What's the catch?" Rebecca's laugh held, surprised delight. "That's what I asked him." His answer was unexpected. She recounted Howard's explanation. Watching her rebuild her professional identity had reminded him of her mother, who had dedicated her teaching career to struggling readers before cancer claimed her life. The center would honor that legacy while establishing Rebecca's independence in a field Howard had once dismissed as unworthy of Stewart ambition. "He said something else, too." Rebecca's voice softened. "He said you were good for me, that you saw me as more than either my disability or my trust fund, that you pushed me to be more than I thought I could be." The admission stunned Jack into momentary silence. After months of thinly veiled tolerance, Howard's endorsement represented a seismic shift in their family dynamic. "Is this his way of apologizing?" Rebecca shook her head. "Not exactly. It's his way of acknowledging reality, and maybe letting go a little." The Literacy Center project consumed the following weeks. Rebecca developed curriculum frameworks and staff requirements, while Jack designed specialized furniture and accessibility features. Emma contributed ideas for the children's reading nooks, drawing from her own experience with dyslexia. Even Howard participated, providing business plan guidance and contractor recommendations, his expertise finally directed towards supporting his daughter's vision rather than controlling it. One evening in early April, as they worked late finalizing designs for the center, a call from Gino interrupted their concentration. The old woodworker's voice was panicked. "Fire at the West Side buildings." Jack and Rebecca raced to the district, arriving to find firefighters battling a blaze that had engulfed one of the historic structures. Business owners gathered in shocked clusters, watching their livelihoods threatened. Howard arrived minutes later, his businessman's composure immediately taking charge as he coordinated with emergency officials. The night stretched endlessly as they worked alongside the community to salvage what could be saved from buildings in the fire's path. Rebecca's wheelchair became a mobile command center, her laptop balanced as she coordinated volunteer efforts. Jack moved between businesses, helping remove valuable inventory and irreplaceable records. Throughout the crisis, Howard remained surprisingly present, not retreating to his estate, but working shoulder to shoulder with those he might once have seen merely as tenants. Dawn revealed both devastation and resilience. The fire had claimed 3 buildings but been contained before spreading further. As exhausted firefighters completed their work, community members gathered at a nearby diner, shell-shocked but determined. Howard moved among them, tablet in hand, already calculating reconstruction costs and insurance claims. "We'll rebuild," Howard announced to the assembled business owners. "Same facades, better infrastructure. No rent increases for existing tenants." His gaze found Rebecca across the room, acknowledging her influence in this unexpected evolution of his business philosophy. As Rebecca wheeled herself to Jack's side, bringing him a much-needed coffee, their hands met briefly in the small gesture of connection that had become second nature. Looking at her soot-smudged face, the determination in her eyes undiminished by the night's exhaustion, Jack felt certainty crystallize within him. "I love you." The words emerged without premeditation, honest and uncomplicated, despite the chaos surrounding them. Rebecca's breath caught her fingers tightening around his. "I love you too, Jack Miller. Even with soot on your face and sawdust in your hair." Howard approached before they could continue, his expression unreadable as he registered their clasped hands. "I've arranged for contractors to begin assessment tomorrow." His business-like tone couldn't entirely mask the grudging acceptance in his eyes as he included Jack in his gaze. Your furniture designs for the Literacy Center should integrate with the reconstruction plans. We'll need to coordinate. The simple acknowledgement represented an unexpected step forward in Howard's gradual acceptance of their relationship. As he moved away to speak with other business owners, Rebecca and Jack exchanged glances of cautious optimism. The night's crisis had revealed something important about Howard Stewart. Beneath his controlling exterior existed a man who genuinely cared about the community his daughter had taught him to see. The fire's aftermath accelerated plans for the Literacy Center, now incorporated into the district's comprehensive rebuilding. Summer found them in the midst of construction, Rebecca's vision taking physical form as walls rose and spaces designed specifically for children with learning differences emerged. Emma spent her school vacation supervising the project, proudly wearing the small hard hat Howard had specially ordered for her. By early fall, the center was ready for its grand opening, coinciding with the beginning of the school year. The ribbon-cutting ceremony drew education professionals from across the city, many eager to learn Rebecca's multisensory techniques. Jack observed from the periphery as she confidently guided tours, demonstrated teaching approaches, and answered questions about methodology. The woman who had once hidden behind computer screens now commanded attention with natural authority, her wheelchair irrelevant to the respect she generated. Howard appeared beside Jack during a quiet moment, both men watching Rebecca across the room. I underestimated her. The admission came stiffly, as close to an apology as Howard Stewart would likely offer. After the accident, I saw only what she couldn't do. Jack nodded, understanding the protective impulse that had manifested as control. She needed time to discover what she could do instead. She needed someone who saw her completely. Howard's gaze shifted to Jack, both her capabilities and her limitations, without either defining her. The observation hung between them, a tacit acknowledgement of Jack's role in Rebecca's reclamation of purpose. When Howard extended his hand, the gesture carried significance beyond social formality. "Take care of her, Miller." Jack accepted the handshake, meeting the older man's eyes directly. "Always. But she can take care of herself too. That's the point." Howard's lips twitched in what might have been the beginning of a genuine smile. "Indeed it is." As fall deepened toward winter, marking nearly a year since their first meeting at Harrison's Market, Jack found himself in his workshop late one evening, focused on a special project. The small mahogany box taking shape beneath his careful hands represented his finest craftsmanship. Dovetail joints precisely fitted the wood, polished to a warm glow. Inside, nestled in velvet, rested his mother's ring, a vintage sapphire that had awaited the right recipient for years. The anniversary of their first encounter arrived with a crisp November chill. Jack arranged a private dinner at home after Emma had gone to sleep at a friend's house. He'd prepared for weeks, refinishing Rebecca's garden furniture, installing subtle lighting among her raised flower beds, and finalizing the mahogany box, whose precise joinery represented his finest work. The evening unfolded perfectly, conversation flowing easily between professional updates and personal reflections, until Jack finally led Rebecca to the garden. Outdoor heaters created a comfortable sanctuary among Rebecca's blooming winter jasmine despite the November air. It was November when we met. Jack positioned himself beside her wheelchair rather than across from it, maintaining the eye-level connection that had become second nature, almost exactly a year ago. Best thing that ever happened to Harrison's Market. Rebecca's wry humor hadn't diminished with time. Losing customers turned out to be surprisingly profitable for us. Jack laughed, tension easing with the shared memory of their inauspicious beginning. "I've been thinking about that day a lot, about how sometimes the moments that change everything don't announce themselves. They just happen." Rebecca studied his face, sensing the conversation's significance, like standing up for a stranger in a grocery store, or helping a little girl read when you didn't have to. Jack reached for her hand, emotions suddenly tightening his throat. "This year with you has taught me something I'd forgotten. That life doesn't just happen to us. We build it choice by choice." He retrieved the mahogany box from his pocket, opening it to reveal his mother's ring that caught the garden lights in prisms of color. Rebecca's breath caught her free hand, rising to her lips as Jack shifted to kneel beside her wheelchair, bringing them eye to eye in the gesture of respect that had become second nature. "I'm not asking because it's practical or because of Emma or the center. I'm asking because loving you has shown me that second chances can be even more beautiful than first ones." His voice remained steady despite his racing heart. Because you see me, really see me, and I see you too, the whole you. Rebecca's eyes glistened with unshed tears, her hand warm and steady in his. We'll face challenges. From my father, from people who don't understand our relationship, from a world that often misunderstands what makes a family. Jack nodded, acknowledging the difficulties without surrendering to them. Then we'll face them together. Every step, every day, at whatever pace works for us. Rebecca reached for his face, her palm cool against his cheek as she leaned forward until their foreheads touched. Yes, Jack Miller. My answer is yes. The ring slid perfectly onto her finger, catching moonlight as Rebecca examined it with wonder. It was your mother's, Jack nodded. She always said it should go to someone extraordinary. Morning brought Emma's return from her sleepover, her delighted exclamation at the sight of the ring removing any need for carefully planned announcements. Does this mean Rebecca will be my mom now? Her directness cut through adult complexities with childlike clarity. Jack and Rebecca exchanged glances, silently conferring, before Rebecca answered. I'll never replace your mom, Emma. Catherine will always be your mother. She reached for Emma's hand, drawing her closer. But if you'd like, I could be your Rebecca. Something different, but just as real. Emma considered this with solemn concentration before breaking into a wide smile. I'd like that a lot. Howard's reaction to their engagement proved unexpectedly measured when they announced it over Sunday dinner at his estate. His gaze lingered on the ring, recognition flickering in his eyes. Your mother's? Jack nodded, surprised. Howard had noticed such details. Yes, sir. An excellent choice. Howard's tone remained neutral, though something like approval crossed his features before businesslike practicality reasserted itself. I assume you'll want a prenuptial agreement. Rebecca has substantial assets that require protection. Dad, Rebecca's exasperation was immediate. That's not appropriate dinner conversation. On the contrary, Howard maintained his composure. Marriage is as much a financial merger as an emotional one. I'd be remiss not to address practical considerations. Jack placed his hand over Rebecca's, intervening before her frustration escalated. Mr. Stewart, I have no interest in Rebecca's assets. I never have. But I understand your concern for her security, and I'm happy to sign whatever documents provide that reassurance. The straightforward acceptance of terms visibly surprised Howard, who had clearly anticipated resistance. His assessment of Jack shifted subtly, respect reluctantly entering his calculation. Perhaps we could discuss details after dinner, in private. The discussion that followed in Howard's study proved surprisingly collaborative, focused less on protecting Rebecca's wealth from Jack than ensuring her independence within marriage. Howard's concerns stemmed not from distrust, but from decades watching powerful men diminish their wives' autonomy through financial control, something Jack had no intention of attempting and Rebecca would never permit. When they emerged 2 hours later, a fragile understanding had been established. Howard extended his hand to Jack, the gesture carrying genuine acknowledgement rather than mere social formality. Welcome to the family, Miller. Family, she deserves extraordinary happiness. See that she gets it. The statement carried both blessing and warning, Howard's version of acceptance wrapped in protective concern. Jack nodded, understanding the complex emotions behind the older man's words. I intend to. Every day. Their wedding took place the following spring at the Literacy Center, transformed for the occasion with children's artwork and handcrafted decorations. Emma served as both flower girl and ring bearer, proudly wearing a dress she had helped design. The ceremony itself reflected their journey. Jack stood while Rebecca remained in her wheelchair, their eye-level connection maintained through thoughtful positioning rather than awkward accommodations. Their vows acknowledged past losses while celebrating present joy. Jack spoke of second chances and seeing beyond surfaces to true selves. Rebecca emphasized choosing partnership that honored independence while building interdependence. Emma insisted on adding her own promises, solemnly vowing to help Dad remember important dates and remind Rebecca to take breaks from working too much. Howard surprised everyone during the reception by requesting the microphone, something neither Jack nor Rebecca had anticipated. The room quieted as he cleared his throat, uncharacteristic emotion evident beneath his customary formality. When my daughter was injured 5 years ago, I made a critical error. Howard's voice carried to the furthest corners. I focused entirely on what she had lost rather than what remained. I sought to protect when I should have empowered. His gaze found Rebecca across the room. Today I see a woman who has built something remarkable, not despite her circumstances, but through them. He raised his glass toward Jack. And I see a man who recognized her strength before I did, who challenged both my daughter and myself to see beyond limitations to possibilities. The room remained silent as Howard completed his toast. To Rebecca and Jack, may you continue building something extraordinary together. As the celebration continued around them, Jack knelt briefly beside Rebecca's wheelchair, bringing them eye to eye in the gesture that had become their signature connection. "This isn't what any of us expected, is it?" she asked softly. Jack shook his head, smiling as Emma raced toward them, clearly intent on dragging them both onto the dance floor. "It's better." The moment crystallized their journey from that November day at Harrison's Market. Family wasn't defined by conventional structures or expectations, but by the conscious choice to see each other completely. Limitations, strengths, complexities, and love accordingly. Their unlikely connection had transformed into something stronger and more authentic than any traditional arrangement could have provided. Together, they moved forward into the celebration and into their future, not as people diminished by past losses, but as a family strengthened by them, their shared journey proving that second chances could indeed surpass first ones when built on foundations of genuine acceptance and intentional love.